Hello and welcome back to the Tin Barn. I'm Pragmatic Lee, and in this week's video I'm going to do an unboxing. This is a Devil Forge 2-burner propane forge from eBay. I don't usually do unboxings on my channel, but what I want to do on this one, since there's not very much on YouTube, I think there's one other video on YouTube on this particular forge. Devil Forge makes a lot of different things. They're in Lithuania, which of course in Europe, and the eBay ad says 8 to 10 days delivery, and I was a little bit skeptical on that. I mean, coming all the way across the big pond. But I ordered this on November the 8th. It arrived on November the 18th. 10 days later, which I thought was extremely good, since of those 10 days, there were 2 Saturdays, 2 Sundays, and Labor Day all in there. So of the 10 days, 5 of them were either weekends or holidays. But in any case, it came in. I've not even opened the box yet. We're going to open it up, unpack it, then there's a sealer that goes on the rock wool in here. It takes, I think, about a day to dry, from best I can read, and other literature on it. So we're going to do that in this video, and then we're going to also come back and fully get it assembled and give it a trial run. So stick with me. Let's get it unboxed now. I can see that the original label has been cut already, so I suspect this was opened in customs, because I did get an email during the travel here that said the package had passed customs and was cleared to come to go the rest of the route. Looks like it's packaged very well. We got some hose. Whole lot of this busted up styrofoam. Let me see if I can get my trash can out here. Alright, there's the paintbrush. That'll be for installing the coating on the rock wool. Alright, this is the refractory rigidizer, is called. I'll read the instructions on that shortly. Seems to be packaged very well. I was actually expecting to have to put all this together, but I see it's put together in one piece already. This is the valve, so that you can use either just one burner, or open this up. Well, that's closed. Open this up and have 2 burners going at one time. This appears to be some type of insulation. Again, we'll get into the instructions shortly. All right, this is the gas regulator and gas fittings. Another piece of the insulation. I suspect this is going to be the brick that goes in the bottom. It's exactly what this is. Looks a little smaller than it did in the picture, but that's just marketing. Some instructions, and then here we have the forge itself. Like I said earlier, it is well packaged. Alright, and here's the forge itself. To give an idea of the opening, let's see, I think I got a That looks like about a 5.5 inch by about 4 inches. It's a knife forge, knife size forge. I'm going to take a look at the, take a minute and read the installation or the assembly instructions, how to put the refractory in this. Then we'll come right back and get ready for the next step. Okay, this refractory says proportion 300 grams of the rigidizer, which is this, and 200 milliliters of water. And my little lab scales here only go up to 200 grams, and with the tare weight there, we'll probably be able to measure out 100 at the time. I suspect this bag is 300, but just to be sure. All right, that's 103. That's 130, so that's 233. And that's 67, so exactly 300 grams in the bag. I suspected that's what it was, but just wanted to be sure. Then it says the 300 milligrams of water. This is the only measuring device I got out here, and it goes up to 150 milliliters, so that would be 2 of those. All right, and it does say use this reasonably quick. Just happen to have a Lowe's paint stick close by. All right, I think I got most of the lumps out. I believe what I'm going to do is the top of it first. It's actually going on a little better than I expected it to. Not really sure what I expected, but and this is really, from what I understand, the only purpose of this, it doesn't really help any in the temperature that the forge will get. It just pretty much keeps this from fogging in the user's face, mouth. Of course, I really don't plan to stick my head inside this thing. I'll be using it outside in a well-ventilated area, but try to be as safe as possible. It's nice of them to supply a paintbrush. Kind of wish it'd been about 2 inches longer. All right, other than this outside right here, I've got a good coat all the way through, but I've got right much of the refractory left, so I'm going to get this outside here, then I want to go back and apply some more, and I'll meet you back here tomorrow after this has had time to cure, set good, and then we'll reassemble or finish the assembly and give it a trial run. All right, it's the next morning. I hope everybody had a good night's rest. It's not been quite 24 hours, but everything seems to be dried, sealed up good. So what we're going to do first is mount the bricks in. All right, that looks good in there. Now the instructions say to mount the burner with it about flush to the bottom of the insulation. So I'm going to snug one of these. Tell you what, I'll take my little snug these up just a little bit on this end, enough to hold it. Well, that was pretty good of the developers. I hadn't noticed it until just then, but this crossbar, see if I can get a little lighter background behind that so you can see what I'm talking about. This crossbar right here, when it sets on these bosses, that's just about as flush as you could hope for underneath. I was trying to make this harder than it was by holding it in place and tightening at the same time. These little pieces of insulation, according to the instructions, are to go in here. All right, I'll bring you back when I get that tucked in there on both sides. All right, I got the insulation around in all the burner inlets now. And what I wound up doing was cutting them short strips, much easier to handle, and tucking it in. Now, in the package, as you saw, we had some gas hose. And this is clearly marked propane butane hose. This happens to be 9mm right here. On top of our burner, we got the where the hose attaches. I'm going to put just a little bit of oil on there just to make slide on a little easier. And in the kit came hose clamps. Okay, it's on about 1.5 inches. This is a 7mm nut on the clamp. I hate to keep turning my back to you, but at least you get some Randy Richard advertising on the back of my t-shirt. Okay, we'll test that for leaks a little later. Now for the opposite end that hooks to the regulator, again we have another hose adapter and another clamp. This is actually a 2-stage clamp, and I need that oil up here on the 2nd stage. Now, gas regulator came pretty much assembled in the package except for the adjusting T. I'm just going to get that started now without any pressure on it. And I believe I'll get some Teflon tape. Now, the Teflon tape did not come with the kit, so you will need to have some of that handy. It may not be required on these LP fittings since that's a ball socket in there, but I'm going to use some anyhow. But I'm going to be mindful that none of it is down in this flare. I want to be sure that flare seat is clean. And that is a left-handed thread. Didn't realize that. All right, vise is right over here at the end of the workbench. I'm going to step over there. Well, I need to get a couple wrenches. I won't have to put this in the vise, but let me get a couple wrenches and I'll be right back. All right, these two fittings were an 18mm and a 19mm, so I've got those tight. And again, we're going to check for leaks on everything before we apply any fire. But now what I want to do is simply go back and snug these bolts a little tighter before I forget that. And this is a 13 millimeter. Now I'm going to try this forge out first with just one burner. Try to get it set up for one burner. I think that's all I'll need the majority of the time. The type of work I'm going to be doing, I don't think I'll have anything this long. So we're going to start out with one burner. And it says for the air vents, if you got multiple burners, the burner not being used to close the air vent entirely on that. So I've tightened that one down. And it says to start with approximately 8 millimeter for the burner you want to use. Now, this is a piece of 3/8 inch stock. That's a little bit thicker than 8 millimeter. Just happens to be something that I had in my scrap bin over there. So I'm going to start with that, go down about a 1/4 thread. And again, this is about an 8 millimeter gap in here, or 3/8. Now we're ready to hook it up to an LP tank and try firing it for the first time. But I don't think there'd be a bit of issue at all using this indoors, and I'm sure I will use it indoors some. But for this first firing, I'm going to take it outside. I'll move the camera out there with it, and we'll fire it up for the first time, and might even stick a piece of metal in there and see how hot it gets. Well, I was getting all ready to carry all this outside and set it up, and stepped outside the tin barn, and it's raining. So I decided to come back in. We're going to fire this up inside, being extra careful. But then I run into a little issue. The eBay ad says that the tank hookup for the regulator is it says gas pressure regulator with US connection, POL CGA 510 with the meter, which that is the standard, what we in the US know as the old type that's screwed inside the tank. The newer, excuse me, the newer types that you see on gas grills, so forth, screw on the outside. I think they may be called a type 1 outlet. The type 2 has a quick disconnect. But I knew that. I knew this had the pole connector on it. But I got ready to try to put it in the tank, and it doesn't fit. I tried it on 2 different tanks. In the slim event that my inside threads were damaged on the first tank I tried. But another thing I ran into, this nut that's on this pole connector should be 7/8 of an inch. 7/8 won't even go, a 15/16 won't go. 1 inch is too big. So I measured it, and it's 24 millimeter, which I don't have a 24 millimeter, so adjustable wrench is fine. But then trying to determine why this would not go in, would not thread in. The thread per inch for a pole connector, the pole CGA 510, is supposed to be 14 TPI. This is not tapered. This is not a pipe thread, just 14 TPI. The diameter on it, let me get my calipers. The diameter of that, according to the specs, should be 0.885 inches. And this is 0.895. It's 10 thousandths too big to screw in there. And so what I'm going to do, these are made, of course, to come off. I'm going to take this stud out so that I can get the nut off. I got the lathe right here. I'm going to turn it, set this in the lathe, put it in there, and just put the file on the thread. If you don't have a lathe, you could probably file that around by hand and get that 10 thousandths off. But basically what it looks like is that the threads were just not cleaned up after they were cut. So I'm going to take this apart. I'll turn it around in the lathe, and I'll bring you right back. All right, I was able to screw this connector out of the regulator. We'll take the stem out, and I'm just going to mount this in, being a 6-sided. It'll mount, of course, in a 3-jaw chuck with no issue. Now, I'm not going to do anything major on this other than just taking a file to these threads. 1885. Boy, I got lucky on that. Let's turn this around. Well, let me clean it off just a little. All right, I'm going to turn around right quick to the gas bottle and see if that fits. Still doesn't quite want to go, so I'm going to file just a little more. And folks, I'm really not concerned that if I mess this up, which I don't anticipate, the seal is not going to be on the threads. The seal is on this stem right here. But if I do mess this up, I'll go to the local hardware store, Tractor Supply I think has got them, and get a replacement nut to go on here, and possibly even get the type 1 connector. But we're going to give this another chance by filing down some more. Okay, I made several attempts at filing down this nut that came on the regulator and just didn't have any success. And I got to thinking about if the outside of it, OD was 10 thousandths too large, I had all ideas that the depth of threads was probably 10 thousandths too large as well. I simply couldn't get it fixed, or couldn't get it to work. Now, I could put this in the lathe and chase those threads. Considerable amount of work. But I rode down to local Tractor Supply and picked up another nut. $3.65, I believe is what it was. And I decided I would measure it just to see. And so, without getting my thread micrometers out, to go across threads as much as reasonably can, that measures 842. The one I just picked up measures 822, 20 thousandths difference. And this one, by the way, I've already tested it in the tank, screws in without any issue at all. So I'm going to get this and the stem mounted back on the regulator, get it hooked on the tank and leak checked, and then hopefully we can finally fire this up. Okay, I think we're ready to give it a firing. Turn the tank on. That was easy enough. Turn the regulator back just a little bit. All right, I'm going to shut it back down, get some tongs close by. And since it's raining so hard outside, as I've said before, my anvil is covered up, but if I was to go out there, I wouldn't be covered up. So I'm going to put just a little piece of 1/2 inch square stock in there, and we're going to watch it and see how long it takes it to turn red. Should have the regulator set now. That's all there is to it, just crack that tank. Now while I was at Tractor Supply, I also picked up a couple of fire bricks. I'm going to block off this back end and see how that does. Of course, like anything, we'll have to learn where the hot spots are. But as you can see, it's red hot. Okay, I think we're going to wrap this video up now. As time goes along, I'll have more time to work with this forge, adjust it some. The instructions say do not try to get a dark blue flame, a light blue flame. And that looks like what I had there, but once I get it outside, get to working with it some and using it, I'll adjust it as necessary and also try out the second burner. But I was very pleased with how fast it heated that up. I'll put, as you saw in the video, some notations of the actual time it took to bring that to forging heat. So if you're considering one of these forges, don't let my little issue with the tank nut discourage you. If there's a bad one in the lot, I'll wind up with it. Chances are you won't have that issue, but if you do, run to your local hardware store and pick up a 3.5 nut and don't mess with trying to make the one that came with it fit. So stay tuned to my channel. You'll see this in use in some upcoming videos pretty soon. Got a lot of items need to make. Take care, and I'll see you on the next video.